I got spiked with ultra-processed foods without even realising it. My name's Gavin and I'm a food policy consultant. I research and write about food policy. You might have seen a lot in the news recently about ultra-processed foods and why they're the worst thing since some Austrian dude back in the 1930s decided he wanted a slightly bigger garden and went about it in slightly aggressive means. You might even be thinking about quitting ultra-processed foods. Well, I tried to do exactly that for 30 days and it didn't quite go to plan. I am pretty roundly failing the ultra-processed challenge. I'm going to tell you what happened and also why you should actually carry on eating ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods are part of the NOVA classification, which was created by Carlos Monteiro in Brazil back over a decade ago. Now there are 4 categories and the first one is basically a raw ingredient. So things like an onion, some chicken, a piece of fish, a banana, all of these things. Category 2 is processed culinary ingredients and that's things like oil that's been extracted or sugar. Just things, you wouldn't really eat them on their own, but you would use them with category 1 to make some tasty food. Category 3 is processed foods and that's where there might be 1 or 2 things added together to make something more complicated. So like sourdough bread would just be a processed food because it's a combination of just a few simple ingredients from categories 1 and 2 to make something much more tasty. Category 4 is ultra processed foods and that's the one that we're looking at now. I'm going to read you some of the official definition because it's quite wordy. These are formulations of ingredients, mostly of exclusive industrial use, made by a series of industrial processes, many requiring sophisticated equipment and technology. Processes and ingredients used to create ultra-processed foods are designed to create highly profitable, that's with low-cost ingredients, long shelf life, emphatic branding, convenient, that's ready to consume, hyper-palatable products liable to displace freshly prepared dishes and meals made from other NOVA categories. There's actually a huge amount of debate as to what is a processed food and what is an ultra-processed food. One thing that clearly separates them is that ultra-processed foods often use ingredients that you would not buy in the supermarket and you would never have them in your domestic kitchen. These are those ingredients where manufacturers have extracted or created specific individual industrial ingredients. They're not things that we would use at home to then create these amazing products that we love to eat so much. Now, I thought this challenge was going to be quite easy. I eat a pretty healthy diet, I make a lot of home-cooked food, yet by day 5, I'd already failed, and then I failed again and again. Let me tell you what happened. So it's day 1, and I've come out for a run. Last night I ate a large pepperoni stuffed crust pizza, some Oreos and a Galaxy, and to be honest with you, feeling a bit rough today. But that was my last blowout before a whole month of no ultra-processed foods, so let's see how this goes. On an average day I eat 3,000 calories and that's quite a lot. It's because I do a lot of exercise. I'm training for a triathlon this year. And as part of those 3,000 calories, I eat around 160 grams of protein a day. To meet that protein goal, I often drink protein shakes, and they're ultra processed, but they're also a really easy way to get extra protein into your diet, which is why I eat them. So I need to find new ways of getting more protein into my diet, however, without relying just on animal-based foods. From a sustainability point of view, it's no use me just eating a shed load more chicken, because that's bad for the environment. So I need to find some more creative ways to get more protein in my diet. I'm completely winging this. I've not planned anything. I've not been shopping. I've not been and bought a load of like new foods for this. We're gonna do it day by day. Today, I'm gonna try and get by on whatever I've got in stock, whatever food I've got here. Tomorrow, I'm gonna go to the supermarket and I'm gonna have to do like a big shop and look at the foods in the supermarkets and see some of the things that I'd normally buy might actually be ultra processed. I think I might get a bit of a shock. Yeah. So anyway, time for a shower. Normally, when I get back from some exercise, I'd have a snack, maybe like a bowl of cereal with some yogurt and a banana or something like that. However, all the cereals I've got are all ultra processed foods. Oat milk, which I sometimes have, that's ultra processed, I can't have that. I do have some porridge oats, so I could make porridge oats with whole milk, and I'm trying to work out what to have for dinner as well. So I found in the freezer, I had a big tub of frozen dal, which I've made myself, so that's not ultra processed. So I'm defrosting that, and I had a piece of salmon in the freezer too. I'm wondering how I'm gonna get my protein intake up, because the thing that's really frustrating is if I eat, say, lots of chickpeas or lentils as a way of getting plant-based proteins, they also contain quite a lot of carbohydrate too, which means that it doesn't then leave space for me to eat things that I actually really enjoy, like sourdough bread. So I'm thinking, because fish is one of the most environmentally friendly sources of animal-based proteins that we can eat, so I'm thinking I might need to do a trip down to the fish market and fill my freezer up with fish, because I think that's going to be the way to go to top up my protein levels without then sort of resorting just eating tons of animal proteins, and land-based animal proteins, that is. Day 1 dinner, a massive bowl of dal, and there's a bit of salmon hiding at the bottom of that. I'm starting to think that this is what I'm just gonna end up eating for the whole month. Anyway, time for dinner. It's Monday morning. Cheers, got coffee here. So these are the things that I found in my cupboard that are ultra processed foods. I can't have these anymore. Some of them, things like oat milk, they are just simply ultra processed. There's no oat milk alternative unless I make it myself. Things like yogurt, this coconut collab, that's an ultra processed food. However, if I go back to just a very basic natural yogurt, then yogurt is fine. This peanut butter is borderline. Normal peanut butter is just peanuts, nothing else added. However, this one's got palm oil added to it, which basically stops that sort of oil separating out from it. So I'm 50-50 about that, because palm oil is a normal oil. I mean, it's a normal ingredient. West African cooking has used palm oil for thousands of years. So palm oil on itself isn't necessarily an ultra processed food ingredient. However, it sits on the borderline. Things like that, ultra processed, light mayo, ultra processed. If I just got real traditional homemade mayo would be fine, brown flakes, ultra mayo. So I'm gonna go to the supermarket now and do some shopping. This is the thing, all of the fresh bakery stuff is all ultra processed, unfortunately, and I desperately want to take some of these home. Okay, that's the first shop done. Now, it's not actually that hard. I home cook a lot of food anyway, so it's not that difficult for me to do this. But what I will say are a few things. Firstly, it pushes you towards like the whole version of a product. Like say take yogurt, for instance, this Greek yogurt here, this contains milk and live cultures. So that's great, that's fine. The moment you go towards like the low fat or no fat ones, they have other things added to them like whey or milk powders and things like that that then make them ultra processed. So you often have to go towards the whole version of a product. It also pushes you towards more expensive products. So when you look at the cereal aisle, almost everything in the cereal aisle is ultra processed. And then you go to look at, say, muesli, like that's kind of like quite a natural product, surely. So you look at Alpen, but Alpen's got, I think again, it might be milk powder added to it. So then you go up to the more expensive versions like this one, and this is just, as far as I can see, whole ingredients. There are no sort of extracts or stabilizers in there. The thing that I find the hardest, almost every single type of snack food that I've ever eaten is an ultra processed food. I think it's gonna push my shopping budget upwards, and also it's gonna make it more time consuming as well, because I won't be able to just grab something in a packet to snack on. Even things like biscuits for cheese, things like that, they're ultra processed too. I think even Ryvita are ultra processed. So it kind of makes things more complicated. But so far, it's all good, and I've got lots of vegetables, and that's an important thing. And I'm gonna make my own version of baked beans, because baked beans are ultra processed, unfortunately. So I'm gonna make my own version of baked beans. It's day 7 of eating 0 ultra processed foods, and I've got 3 big updates for you. Number 1, how I got spiked with ultra processed foods without even realizing it. Number 2, why I'm gonna carry on the challenge despite having eaten some. And number 3, why you shouldn't obsess over cutting them out of your diet. I also think I'm getting sugar withdrawal. At the start of this challenge, I was concerned about my protein intake because I drink recovery shakes. I'm training to do a triathlon. I eat a lot of food, like over 3,000 calories a day. And I use protein shakes as an easy way to increase my protein intake each day. So this morning, I went to Billingsgate Fish Market to try and find some sustainable fish and bought a 4-kilogram halibut. I've got... I went to the local supermarket, but the fish counter scared me because I had no idea if any of this stuff was actually sustainable. I mean, God knows, I'm supposed to be the expert here, Jesus. So the way I got spiked was I was in town the other day and I needed to get some lunch with a friend. Now, I went to this like vegan cafe place and chose something that was so clearly like home cooked beans and vegetables, just like really safe food. And I was really pleased with myself. I ate it, it was lovely, perfect. As I was leaving, I realized I'd put chili sauce on my food, and it's because my friend had said that they wanted some, that they put it on mine too. That chili sauce came from a bottle, probably a bit like something like this. And basically all condiments like this are ultra processed. So I'd eaten some ultra processed food without even realizing. I also think I'm getting a little bit of sugar withdrawal because all of my added sugar in my diet came from ultra processed foods. Things like recovery drinks, cereal bars, ice creams, I mean, the list goes on. But the reason why I want to carry on this challenge for the full 30 days, even though I've now kind of failed in a way, is because I want to find out what other situations I end up in where it's really difficult to avoid them. There's a really important reason why you shouldn't obsess over cutting ultra-processed foods out of your diet. Just doing this challenge after 1 week, I've started getting anxiety about what I can and can't eat, where I can and can't eat, whether there will accidentally be some ultra-processed foods. So doing this challenge has basically put me into a situation where I'm scared to go out with friends because I'm not sure what food I'll be able to eat. And that is basically an eating disorder after 1 week. And also the thing about ultra-processed foods is they are everywhere. And some estimates say they make up 60% of the UK diet. What we need to do is perhaps reduce the amount we're eating rather than cut them out completely. Because life without chili sauce, the odd donut or a bag of crisps is frankly a pretty dull place to be. It's day 8 of eating 0 ultra-processed foods, and today I'm thinking a lot about snacks. I'm thinking about snacks and convenience. I've just been for a long run. I'd normally make a recovery shake after that, you know. It's got protein, carbohydrates, and it takes me like 2 seconds to make it. And I wanted something to drink that's gonna be a healthy thing to drink. So I've got all these like books about athletes and food for recipes for athletes and for runners. And then I have to make something. It takes me 5 minutes. Like berries and yogurt and chia seeds and oats. I mean, it tastes lovely and I mean, it looks lovely and it's probably super healthy too. However, it took 5 to 10 minutes maybe instead of just like 30 seconds. And let's talk about snacks. Snacking is just not really a thing when you don't have ultra-processed foods. If I'm hungry in the evening, I might eat a little bit of cheese from the fridge, maybe a carrot, maybe a handful of nuts. None of those are things where I will gorge on them until the entire packet is gone. I just won't do it. They don't have that compulsive nature to their flavor. I simply don't have any other snacks in the house that aren't ultra-processed. So I'm probably eating less calories because I don't have the opportunity to polish off half a tube of Pringles or to buy a little ice cream. It's actually been quite hard work planning to get enough calories in the day anyway. I can definitely see how ultra-processed foods would lead to eating more calories. It's really quite clear. It's Thursday the 25th of May, it's the day 12 of no ultra-processed foods. And in that cupboard over there, I've got half a pack of Oreos that are left over from when I filmed a video about Oreos a few weeks ago. And I nearly ate one. And the reason for this is because I feel a bit ill at the moment. Since COVID, I've had COVID 3 times. And since that, I get ill all the fucking time. I don't talk about this, but it literally is driving me insane. That basically the end of 2021, I get low-key ill on such a regular basis, it is driving me insane. However, what happens when we get a bit ill? Well, personally, I eat. I feel like I can eat my way out of the illness. And that's how it is today. I was just looking in the cupboard. You know that thing when you open the cupboard and you just sort of scan the cupboard looking for something. And I just saw on the top shelf, because I'd hidden them out of the way, because obviously I can't eat them during the challenge, I've hidden them out of the way with the chili sauces. And I saw the Oreos, I was like, I could eat some of those. Nobody would ever know, would they? Nobody would ever know. But I didn't, and I'm gonna eat this instead. Anyway, that's today. Nearly failed, nearly broke, but I didn't. If you have a social life of literally any kind, it's almost impossible to avoid ultra-processed foods and still have fun. And let me tell you why. It's the end of a lovely bank holiday in London, you can tell because I'm sunburnt. On Saturday I went into the Bermondsey Beer Mile with a bunch of other content creators. We had a lovely time. We met in a cafe where I grabbed a coffee and I looked at the lovely pastries they had on offer. I asked if they had the ingredients lists and no, they didn't. Therefore I couldn't have one because I didn't know if they were ultra processed or not. Strike one. Then we went off and started drinking beer, and some of that could have been ultra processed, and to be honest with you, I didn't really ask because we were going to 18 bars, and I'm not going to ask 18 bars what the ingredients of each beer is. I mean, they're good quality beers, so hopefully they were just water, hop, yeast, whatever the main ingredients of beer are. We reached the 5th bar and someone offered me a piece of beef jerky which had been made in-house in that brewery. So of course I grabbed it and ate a piece because it tasted lovely. And then I looked at the ingredients. The different types of flavourings that have been used to make that beef jerky would have made it ultra processed, so therefore strike 2. By bar 18 we were all piling to a mountain of halloumi fries which were most undoubtedly ultra processed because they absolutely slapped and those flavourings were not natural. By this point, the concept of avoiding ultra-processed foods had completely left my mind because I was drunk and I just wanted to enjoy myself. On Sunday, I woke up and, well, I was a bit hungover. So what did I want? Pizza, sausages, all the things that are most commonly found in ultra-processed form. You can get sausages that are not ultra-processed, but a lot of your average ones will be. You can get pizza that's not ultra-processed, but again, if you get a Papa John's or Domino's, that will probably be ultra-processed. Anyway, we went for a walk up to Tower Bridge to cheer on some of the Ride 100 riders, and my girlfriend's like, oh, let's get some ice cream. It was a sunny day, sitting by the river in London, and I was like, I'm not sure if I'm allowed that. Yeah, not sure if I'm allowed ice cream on a sunny Sunday afternoon in London, sitting by the river. I don't want to live in a world where I can't eat that, literally. Like, I don't want to exist in that world. We went to the lovely gelateria. They were late opening. The woman was in an awful mood, and to be honest, I didn't even ask her what the ingredients were. I didn't want to make her day any worse than it was. She'd been left by the boss on her own to run a busy gelateria by Tower Bridge all day on a bank holiday weekend when it was 21 degrees and sunny. I mean, like, she was in for the worst day of her life. So I wasn't going to make it any worse by asking, oh, what ingredients are in this? It was lovely ice cream, and yeah, I did eat some. So by this point, I am pretty roundly failing the ultra-processed challenge. But I'm going to carry on because I think these are the interesting scenarios that we end up in. So is it actually possible to completely avoid ultra-processed foods? Well, yes it is, but you would have to engage in some pretty unhealthy restrictive eating practices to do it, and I'm not here for that. Day 16 of no ultra-processed foods. This should be really day 16 of not much ultra-processed food. The zero ultra-processed food, it's not going to happen, all right? I've just finished the workout at the gym and sweated out most of the bank holidays excesses, and now I've got to go to an appointment in London, and I'm really hungry, so I want to get a snack. Let's see if I can find any snacks on the way that are not ultra processed. Wish me luck. Bottle of kefir and a banana, £3, which is probably more expensive than just a recovery drink, an ultra processed recovery drink. Might be similar price to like an ultra processed snack kind of drink. So yeah, pretty good, but I did have to look around and think about it. I couldn't just pick up the easiest thing, that's for sure. 26 days ago, I stopped eating ultra processed foods. Well, I tried to stop eating them at least. Some of you want to know if I've had any health benefits, and I'll get onto that in a moment. I'm just going to fill you in what's happened over the last 7 days. When I'm working from home during the week, I eat lots of lovely fresh home cooked food. It's very simple to avoid them, although I'm missing chili sauce. And I would quite like to be able to have the occasional protein shake too. The problem starts when I leave the house. Last weekend I went to stay with my brother and we went to a motorsport event. Motorsport events are not known for their high quality food offerings. True to form, Burger Van was the primary source of catering. I took some food that was not ultra processed. I found these crisps that were not ultra processed. I had some nuts. I also took some roasted chicken drumsticks. Just like picnic kind of stuff, you know? We had to leave at 6 AM to get to the site on time, and when we got there, my brother offered me a sausage and egg sandwich, and I mean, that's my kryptonite, it really is. So I said yes, of course. Bread roll and the sausage was probably ultra processed. But you know, I had it. At the end of the day, we went back to my brother's house and my niece offered me a Magnum. And I said yes again. Next morning, we got up and they had some breakfast cereal, but all of the breakfast cereal was ultra processed too. So I ate more ultra processed foods. Now, you might be thinking, this guy is really not trying very hard, but that's the whole point. This is a social experiment to find out if it's possible to actually avoid ultra-processed foods. And the answer to that is only if you avoid social eating occasions. A healthy diet isn't just about your protein, carbohydrate, fat, sugar, etc. There's actually a social element to healthy diets. Eating communally is regarded as a very healthy eating practice. If I stuck to eating no ultra-processed foods completely, I would have had to excluded myself from every social eating event over the weekend. And avoiding social eating occasions is bad for your mental health. And we all know that if your physical health is meaningless when your mental health is in the gutter. Some of you have asked about the health changes I've seen during this experiment. There's a concept in science called N=1. That refers to any scientific experiment where the number of subjects involved is just 1, because we can't take any meaningful results when we only study one person. To find out if there are true health benefits, you need to study hundreds, if not thousands of people. If I have experienced any health changes, it's not actually verifiable that it's anything to do with ultra-processed foods. Since I started the challenge, it's gone from being grey and cloudy days every day to being beautiful sunny blue skies every day. That's probably had a bigger overall effect on my mood and energy levels than just changing the amount of ultra-processed foods I eat by a small amount. To answer the question of whether there are any health benefits to stopping eating ultra-processed foods, that is something that scientists need to work out when they study thousands of people, not just one random dude on TikTok who stopped eating chili sauce and burgers for a month. The 30 days are up. I've failed a few times. I learned 5 really important things, and also the main reason why you should carry on eating ultra-processed foods to an extent. Number 1, the categories and boundaries are really confusing. I mean, over on Twitter, there are food experts arguing over what is and isn't an ultra-processed food. And when I was looking through ingredients labels, I was looking at things, I'm like, I think that's ultra-processed, but I'm not quite sure. For example, is a cereal that's only got a couple of ingredients plus one ultra-processed ingredient really ultra-processed? That doesn't feel like it should make sense. So I learned that basically, it's very hard to determine what actually is and isn't ultra-processed. Some things it's very obvious, Pringles, Oreos, etc. But other things it really is quite complicated and hard to work out. Number 2, ultra-processed foods are literally everywhere. Once you're out of your home, it becomes very difficult to monitor every single thing you eat, especially if you go and visit friends or family at their houses. We have very little control about what food other people serve us. Now, obviously we can decline food and just not eat anything, but I'm not that kind of person. If someone puts food in front of me, if I go to my brother's for dinner and they serve up an ultra-processed dessert, yeah, I'm gonna eat it. In our own homes, it becomes quite complicated too, because many condiments have ultra-processed ingredients. So the sauces and flavorings you can add to food become quite limited too. Number 3, everything suddenly becomes more expensive. Ultra-processed foods are really good value. They're quite cheap. For example, if you look at breakfast cereals, take muesli. Standard supermarket muesli is like 34 pence per 100 grams. Whereas if you go up to the one that's not ultra-processed, suddenly it's like 52p per 100 grams. So that's an entire more than 50% more in terms of cost. And this happened across the board. The cheapest dark chocolates are ultra-processed, whereas once you go up just a couple of notches in quality, they are not ultra-processed anymore. So yeah, when you stop eating ultra-processed foods, your diet becomes more expensive. Number 4, the excess calories in my diet largely came from ultra-processed snack foods. Yeah, I hadn't realised this, but the sneaky pain au chocolat at the in-store bakery when I'm doing my weekly shop, or on my way to the station I just grab a cereal bar, or even the tube of Pringles when I watch a film. All of these things are quite calorie-dense foods, and I stopped eating them. And I think that my calorie intake actually became more consistent over that period because of the fact that I wasn't introducing these calorie dense and really quite enjoyable foods into my diet. Another example is popping around to the shop to get an ice cream on a hot evening. I wasn't doing that anymore because the corner shop only sells ultra processed ice creams. And number 5, and I think this is one of the most important reasons why you should continue eating ultra processed foods, is that I got increased levels of anxiety around eating out of home, social events, and well, just simply buying foods too. I became quite obsessive about checking ingredients lists on boxes, and that's really not very healthy. Of course, it's great to eat good food and to try and choose healthier food, but if every social interaction becomes a bit anxiety inducing because I don't know what someone's going to serve me, then that's not a good thing. Now that it's been a few days since the challenge ended, I've tried a few ultra processed foods that I had absolutely avoided, things like Oreos and Pringles. And my God, the flavor, the intensity of the flavor hit that you get from those is on another level. I mean, I've been to nice restaurants and I've eaten good food, but there's something so intense and basic and primal about the way that we react to things like Oreos especially, that honestly, you don't get it from any other foods. A few weeks ago, Panorama did a documentary about ultra-processed foods, and they made it sound like they were going to kill us all within the next few years. And while there is some evidence that they are bad for our health, it is nowhere near as conclusive as Panorama made it sound. Because of the 5 things I've just told you I learned, and because of the fact that the evidence is only growing around ultra-processed foods, the best thing that any of us can do around ultra-processed foods is just reduce the amount of them in our diet. And I think this is quite obvious, to be honest. If you're just surviving on Doritos and Diet Coke, then you don't need me to tell you that there are healthier ways to eat. What the 4 Nova categories do is push us towards eating more fruit, veg, legumes, nuts, seeds, like all the just things that we kind of knew were healthy anyway. But striving for 0 ultra-processed foods, that's an extreme diet as far as I'm concerned, and I don't think it's healthy in today's society. So the best thing you can do is focus on making good, wholesome, healthy food, and wherever you can. And if you have some ultra-processed foods along the way, so what? It's not the end of the world, is it really?